Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rational Female Podcast. And today we are going to be talking about incels. So, this is an obviously very culturally relevant topic, and it's one that I'm really curious to hear what the panel will be saying about it today. So, today's debate should be very, very interesting. And I'd like to kick us off with whoever would like to go first. Really, if you want to go first, raise your hand and the floor is yours. Okay, Guadalupe, please start. You've got 4 minutes, and when your time is up, I shall go like this, and then that'll be good. Please go on.
Okay. Incels. Well, hello, everybody. I am very happy to be here. I do enjoy all this a lot. Today's topic, incels. Well, I was just telling Andrew a little bit before that it was not something that I had paid a lot of attention in the past. But thinking about it, I remember when just a few years back, I came across a situation where I realized that there was something new happening, although in this case, it wasn't the celibacy aspect included, but it was something to do with men's emotions and men's difficulties in communicating their emotions. And it was, and I will say it because I think it's connected to the topic. I just came across this young man who was presenting a book about how men didn't have real mates. Yeah. And there was a lot of people, a lot of psychologists, a lot of interest, especially male psychologists and, well, males in general. And what he was saying, his book was about, it was that he had just got married and he had a lot of mates, but he couldn't find anybody that was actually, for him, anybody to ask him to be his best man. Okay, so finally he asked one girlfriend of his wife to be the best man. Okay, so in the presentation, he had a lot of PowerPoint. He had a PowerPoint and he had photographs. First of all, he said, "This is my beautiful wife." That's all he said. And then he had photographs with all his mates, very close. They were all very close together, laughing. They were a little bit drunk. They were in the football embracing, almost crying. They were on holidays. They were very happy. And there were about 10 slides. And then at the end, everybody agreed that, well, men had a lot of problems and all that. So all of a sudden, and it was all very fast, I said that I didn't understand what he was trying to tell us, because with his mates, he was very happily displaying emotion. They were having an amazing time. They were very close physically, and they were having they were sharing a lot of emotions. So what was the issue? And then he said that men cannot communicate their real emotions. And I said to him, it was a little bit not the right place to say it, but I just said it. And I said, yes, because you haven't told us here anything about your real feelings either. Because you told us about your wife, this beautiful woman, which we all could see, she was a beautiful woman, but you hadn't told your friends and us for you to get the best mate. This is the woman I love, the woman I cannot live without, and my friends, I want to share it with you, and I want one of you to be my best mate. And everybody started to, and I said as well, this is the negative side of masculinity. Men only want, he was happy to present his wife physically like a beautiful woman to the others, but not his emotions. And I think that's a little bit connected with these groups of incels, which really don't have skills, I think, to communicate their feelings to a woman, to a girl. They seem to be very young, and to have a proper relationship. No. So that's the connection, and that's my introduction, although I know there are many other aspects. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Guadalupe, for kicking us off. Now, would somebody from the non-feminist side like to jump in for a 4-minute presentation of their perspective? Okay, Tim, go for it.
Okay, can you hear me? So, oh boy, incels, 4 minutes. Incel stands for involuntary celibate. It was actually a term invented by a woman. So I will assert that involuntary celibates exist, that there are people out there, if for whatever reason, they cannot break through on their opposite sex. They just can't do it. Whether it's a lack of skill or attractiveness or awkwardness or whatever it is. And most of them are men. And I will also assert that, well, I'll quote somebody to clarify that. Let's see if it, who is this guy? I'm going to quote a guy named David Burns, who was a medical student at the time. He says, quote, occasionally I'd sit for hours in the student union trying to strike up conversations with women. Whenever I saw an attractive woman, I would greet her with a lame comment such as, oh, what's your name? Do you go to school here? I'm a medical student, and so on. Within a minute or two, she would inevitably excuse herself by saying, I'm just waiting here for my boyfriend, who will be here along any minute. This was discouraging, but I'd nonetheless try over and over and over again. I probably became one of the most rejected men in Northern California, since I accumulated as many as 50 to 60 rejections per week. Despite a success rate of approximately 0, I continued to pursue the opposite sex, figuring that maybe somehow I might soon learn the ropes. So that's a male experience, and it's impossible to determine what sort of percentages we're talking about. It's a chaos of opinion out there. But according to the data, like for of apps, right, of relationship apps, dating apps, the vast majority of men do appear to be essentially invisible to women within that particular structure. And I will assert that much of this has to do, is connected with hypergamy and with women's relative rise economically and in status and in wealth, which is the relative decline of men in status, wealth, and whatever the other one was. That this is happening all over the world, and that much of the result is a vast decrease in marriage, home, family, parenting, childbirth. And again, it's, I just go out there and I'm a sponge. I try to absorb as much information as I can out there, and it is a chaos of opinion. And it's like in one universe, women are horny and desirous, and men have it easy. And in this other universe, women are not sexual. They're not. They're kind of oblivious, indifferent, resistant, and males have it very difficult, like this Robert Burns that I just quoted. And it's been baffling to try and sort that out. It's like a multiverse.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to stop you there.
Okay.
That's really interesting. Yeah, very interestingly said. By the way, for some reason, my background keeps going on and off. I don't know what's going on today, but let's not bother with that. So thank you. So Andrew, would you like to come in now and offer your rebuttal slash perspective on this topic? Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I came into this today wondering if my perspective was going to be representative of like the quote unquote feminist perspective, because I don't really know what feminism thinks about incels, because from what I've read in The Guardian, there is interest in incels, and I think there is empathy for incels, because I think the stereotype might be to say that feminists think incels are a bunch of toxic men who, you know, hate women and all that stuff, right? From what I've read, I don't know if that's necessarily true. I'm sure it is a big part of the anxiety around the manosphere and incels. I don't know if we can conflate those two necessarily, but the online male network and how it looks and feels to women, it can be quite scary, I think. So a lot of women, a lot of feminists probably don't like the culture. They don't like the manosphere. But I think there is also an understanding that a lot of incel culture is less about hating women and more about what Tim just described, which is, you know, this kind of inability and capability to build relationships, and the loneliness and the heartache and the kind of the social rejection of that. And I will say, when I was in my 20s, as a teenager, I was basically an incel. Not that I was online, because obviously online wasn't a thing. But you know, I just could not, for the life of me, get laid or talk to women, and you know, it really hurt. Like, it was really bad, and I really suffered. But now I feel like the mistake from that perspective is to resent women or blame women, because what I've come to understand is that it's not just men who have trouble with women, it's women who have trouble with men, and it's people who have trouble with people. But the trouble is it's a different experience if you're a man to a woman and heterosexual, all that stuff. It's a completely different experience. But I think everybody struggles, because I don't think as a society we teach people how to engage like in healthy ways with each other as young people. And I think men really struggle with that. And I think there is a kind of imbalance that, you know, men are generally seen as the ones who should approach, but nobody tells you how to do that. And then when you do that, you don't get the response. And sometimes you get, you know, people just looked at me like baffled when I would talk, or they would just look at me like scared, or, you know, and you get this horrible response. And it's like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do? You know, everyone tells me I'm supposed to be the one, you know, talk to women and make the move, but then they just treat me badly when they do. So obviously there's going to be some kind of resentment and, you know, problems that come from that. But I think, no one teaches men how to approach women, but nobody teaches women how to deal with men either. Like, I mean, lots of people tell women how to deal with men, but I don't think that they tell them in very good ways to deal with men, and like how to appreciate what men are trying to accomplish. And I think if there is a feminist perspective, I think the answer is not to define incels and manosphere culture as toxic and hating women. I think it needs to understand that everybody has a problem, and it's not women's role to kind of make it easy for men, right? It's not, the answer isn't to make women sort of just make things easy for men. The answer is for everybody to kind of work out how to teach young people to have relationships with each other.
Yeah, that was very, very insightful. I really appreciated your perspective on that just now. So now, Clark, would you like to give the non-feminist perspective that you hold, please?
Yes, thank you. Happy to be here. Grateful to have been invited. Inceldom is normality returning after centuries of enforced monogamy. Only 40% of all human males have reproduced successfully historically, compared to 80% of females. Good statistics. Most of the incels are men. Probably. That's because women control sex and men control access to relationships. So naturally, if a man wants sex and it isn't made available to him one way or the other, either financially through prostitution or sex work or other means, and if he's not top 20% of males, then involuntarily he will be celibate. Now, that's, in my opinion, not necessarily a bad thing. And I'd like to also add that the term incel, in my opinion, should be relegated to the dustbin of history, as is the N word. And if all you need to do is trade the term incel for the N word, and then you'll see how disparaging, how negative, how caustic, how toxic that term is. And so for people to just bandy it about, to freely express the term, in my opinion, is an example of how men are disposable in society, in our culture. Empathy for incels. I don't see it. I don't see it at all. As a matter of fact, because the term is used so freely without any regard for how it lands or affects men, is, in my opinion, a demonstration of how there is no empathy for incels. And let's take a look at that term, involuntarily celibate. Well, who is not involuntarily celibate? If a woman is celibate, that's voluntarily. But if a man is celibate, maybe he's a MGTOW, or maybe he doesn't have the social skills, the game in order to bag a woman of his choice, or he doesn't have the financial resources to do so. Some incel descriptions are troubles with women having troubles with men. I'd say that's a small percentage of the total. Let's see, I got about a minute, plus or minus. Men having trouble engaging. Well, yes, because once again, it's the masculine burden of performance and engaging. And this falls back on romantic history and the history of romance. Obviously, resentment. Of course, if a person is sandbagged, is given the stiff arm, always, constantly, then they may rightfully develop some resentment. And let's take a look, if we can, at how that term was developed, where that term came from.
I'm going to stop you there.
The phrase?
Thank you very much for your perspective. Yeah, there's some very, very insightful things being said here today, and it's certainly giving me a lot of food for thought as well. So now everybody has the chance to speak for up to 2 minutes uninterrupted, to counter what the other has said, or perhaps to even agree with what somebody else has said. So I will just allow people to, I'll just stop in between and say, right, who wants to comment? So who'd like to comment next? Andrew, go for it.
So I will say, I will agree that we should have empathy for men who experience inceldom. I don't think we should view them as toxic just because they are they feel, rejected. However, just because you feel rejected doesn't give you any right to ownership or access a relationship or access sex any more than anyone else does. And how you behave as a result of your feeling of rejection and insecure, all that stuff, you should be held accountable for that behavior, and any toxic behavior should be viewed as toxic as a result of that. One thing that I kind of feel like we can fall into a bit of a rabbit hole of the whole 80-20 thing, like the whole 80-20, like 80% of women, I can't remember what, but women have it easier than men. Women can get any man they want, all that stuff. I think that's overstated. I think lots of women also have trouble finding men. There are plenty of female incels, even though they don't necessarily use that term. And if it was true that, women only go after a certain type of man, you would never see an ugly man who was married. You'd never see a poor man who was married. You'd never see someone who lacked confidence and didn't have a girlfriend. I've met plenty of old, ugly, fat, low confidence idiots who have wives and girlfriends, quite lovely girlfriends as well, beautiful girlfriends, right? So it's not true that you can't get a girlfriend if you're a certain type of man. And so this whole idea of involuntary celibacy, that it's based on just not knowing how to relate to people and not knowing how to relate to women beyond trying to access them for sex and relationships. And therefore, that's not necessarily a healthy way of being. If you're only interested in a woman because you want to have a relationship or have sex, then that's very much a kind of selfish view. You need to start taking an interest in people, right? And then that makes things better. So that's all I'm going to say.
Very insightful. Cool, Tim, go for it.
Okay, yeah. Andrew and I find ourselves in pretty much complete agreement out there. That's why I say it's so damn baffling, right? I mean, yeah. What is going on? So, there's evidence that rejected males outnumber rejected females in every culture, and by a pretty wide margin. As Clark was saying about the DNA evidence, 67% of our genetic ancestry is female. That is because about twice as many women as men managed to get their genes in the gene pool. And yet, yeah, I see what you see, Andrew, too. What else? Yeah, I think what's really important, a point to make, is that someone who can't get laid is not just deprived of this sort of sexual candy. Let's have empathy for them. They're deprived of any real depth of companionship, of emotional and physical intimacy, sex, love, romance, marriage, home, family, parenting, you see. So yeah, it's bad enough for someone who can't get that emotional sustenance without then heaping hostility on him because he's deemed a threat to women. I think these so-called incels would be a lot less threat to women if they receive some empathy rather than always just all this antipathy, right? And yeah, I mean, incel can just mean involuntary celibate, but it's come to be a sort of catch-all term for any male that does not toe the feminist party line. It's just become an epithet you can heap on men. And so I agree with Clark. It's really become very negative, destructive word.
Okay, Guadalupe, would you like to jump in? You've got 2 minutes.
Yes, I'm not sure where to start from. Okay, first of all, I think it was Clark who said about to bug a woman. I think you mentioned that expression. I think it's so offensive. I think that's one of the things why, if women are not seen as human beings, is I understand that many women don't like some men, not because they don't like men, it's because of the way they address them and the misogyny behind. How can you bag a woman? But anyway, let us leave it in aside. If you look at men, if you look at powerful men out there, most of them are not physically attractive at all. And most of them are a little bit older, because society offers much more to the older man, over 35, 40, 45, men in their 40s are very attractive to younger women. For younger women are very attractive to those men. And in fact, older men can find partners, female partners that are much younger, yes? Because life or the society offers much more to men as they grow older. Andrew, that's why probably when you were a teenager, the girls were not interested, because there was a hunky man in his 30s or late 20s that was to them much more attractive, as it was nothing to do with you. Probably it was just that's how girls are. And girls, when they are young, women, when we are young, well, I am old. Here we have a very young woman. We get much more attention, and we are much more in demand. And when we are young, but as we go older, that disappear. You understand? So it's a different thing there that happens, because society, that's how it is, yeah, designed. Younger women are more valuable for older men. Okay, I leave it there. Sorry.
Cool. Right. Yeah, I think everyone's got some very insightful things to say today. Who would like to come next? Clark, would you like to go for it? Please come in.
I don't think we are speaking at cross purposes here. I think that everybody agrees that the use of the term may be somewhat disquieting and may be disparaging and might be considered taboo. I think that most of us can agree that women control access to sex and men control access to relationships. And a woman receives sex for whatever reason, and a man pursues sex, perhaps to have a relationship or perhaps to have just sex. And say what you want about the 80-20 rule, but the data bears it out. And statistically speaking, as you said, Guadalupe, there are some men older with more resources or younger who are more handsome and have game. Those men have more sex. It's just a fact that we need to deal with, however society wishes to do so. And this issue of inceldom, I think, once again, I'll say it again, I'll say it as often as I can, the term needs to be disposed of. Wealth accumulates over time. If you're broke when you're young and a man, then you're not very attractive to women generally.
Sorry, please don't read the comments so that it wastes time. I just show on the screen. Yeah, so okay. I thought you finished. So yeah, so before we continue, I just want to say one thing. I'm personally very distrustful of these stats that are thrown around largely in red pill circles, 80-20, or there's things on men under 30 are virgins, because I have looked into some of them and they're not entirely true. So I'm I'm not entirely sure I agree that 80% of men or 80% of women are attracted to 20% of men. I would have to personally look more into that, but I don't personally know if that's true. Sorry, Clark, you come in a bit after. We'll just let somebody else come in first. So unless you really want to talk, is that case?
All I want to say is, are you willing to accept the data from dating sites?
No, what I'm saying is that sometimes these are misconstrued because they want to perpetuate sensationalism, because this is something I've actually talked about in other videos. So I'm just saying I haven't actually looked at that myself, but I'm saying we shouldn't necessarily assume that these things that are constantly recited in red pill circles, like, 80-20 or whatever, are actually true. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying we shouldn't automatically believe everything we hear. Anyway, so right, who would like to jump in next? All right, Andrew, go for it.
Yeah, I think I just want to reiterate. So I'm less interested in the actual data and the actual statistics, and I'm more interested in what people use those statistics to say about the world and say about the role of men and women. And one thing I think where incel culture, quote unquote, or the manosphere, or whatever you want to call it, something that really does, that is not very good from that world is the implication that women are somehow withholding sex from men, and that is the problem. I think that is a really bad way to interpret the situation. I am willing to admit that there is probably trends in terms of women's access to sex, men's access to sex. Like, I'm sure there is some difference between how men and women experience that and so forth. But it doesn't, just because some men sometimes struggle to have sex, doesn't mean that women owe them sex. It doesn't mean that society is like that these men are somehow losing in society, right? The way to get, because it's not about, and Tim said it, it's not just about sex, it's about love, it's about companionship, and that's really true. But I think the way to love and companionship is to respecting the other person and understanding that they are there for more than just your satisfaction or even your use of them as a loving partner. And I think that's a broader conversation in terms of men and women roles and men and women in relationships, because there's a lot, you could bring up the sort of emotional labor that women talk about, that like even men who are in relationships, they seem to view the woman as it's her role to take on the emotional labor, and they, so there's a bigger conversation about what men should expect from a relationship and from women. And I think we should, sorry, I'll stop.
Okay, may I? Yeah.
Yes.
Again, I agree with you, Andrew. I think everything you're saying is very astute. I would just add to it, and I'll reiterate that the hypergamy issue. Women are attracted to what they're attracted to, and I don't think attraction is a choice. And I don't think women can choose to be attracted to men of a lower economic or educational status. And you see, what I think has changed, why incel is a thing now where it never was in the past. In the past, you had women were waitresses and secretaries, and some man stuck in middle management could still look like a catch. He could still have a family supporting wage. He could still, hold down the economic burden of the family. And so he could still be attractive and desirable. And it's changed because, women now are executives. A woman, some PhD woman driving a Mercedes, she looks around and she still wants that male that makes even more money than she does. She's looking for a man who is a provider, only he's not a provider of wealth exactly these days. What he's a provider of is options. If a man has a high enough wage, he can provide a woman with the option to work a full-time, high-wage, high-stress job, or take a lower full-time but low-stress, low-wage job, or maybe a part-time job, or a truly fulfilling volunteer work, or maybe stay home and be full-time parent. That's what a wealthy man can give her, those options, and a poor man cannot.
Okay, so yeah, no, honestly, well said. Guadalupe, would you like to comment?
Yes, I don't know if it's my turn or Clark wants to speak. Yeah, okay. Okay, well, yes, I always find so many things to say, I don't know, and then I don't say much. This idea, first of all, two ideas that, see, when the incels, because I've been reading about the incels and the manosphere and all that, I mean, they are very young men that seem to have the ideas of their great grandparents. I mean, I remember coming from where I come from, that's how men used to think about women. And we see, because women, we are so capable of really work, study, have our own place, go out, travel. We don't need a provider. What women need, for what I see, they want men that are grown up in the sense that are not emotionally, or they cannot show emotions or whatever, but they can. They can show emotions because they can be very violent. Only not all the emotions, yeah? But they do show emotions, and they are usually, the anger, they are free to show it usually. That's very, very common. And then, so women now, I think young women, expect a man that seems to be a fully grown up person. He doesn't have to be the macho man here, I provide and all that. No, they want someone who is someone who works, has a good job, yes. Someone, so at least they can have a proper home. They can have, yes, but the woman as well. The woman is working as well. I've been working all my life. All my life, I've been studying, working. I am independent. I don't need a man to, but I love having a relationship with a man, but he's not my provider. You understand? I don't need anybody to provide for me. I want a companion in life that we both create. We have a common project, and we create an atmosphere for our children. I suppose the young women is what they want. Obviously, when women are, I finish now, when women are in their 20s and men as well, there is a little bit of the physicality of it is very, very strong. But then eventually the relationship is a loving relationship. Okay, I finished here.
Okay, would anybody like to comment after that? Please, just if you want to comment, just raise your hand, okay? Yep, Tim, go on.
I'm always prepared. Yeah, you see, I sense in what Guadalupe is saying is an evasion. She's looking for a man with a good job. It's just a euphemism for a high wage, you see, and the men don't necessarily care if a woman has any wage or not. It's the difference, you see, and if you want that man with a good job, then there are fewer and fewer of them, and that means that there's a larger percentage of men that are being rejected. There's always been a higher percentage of men than women that are ultimately rejected, but it's increased owing to women's rise, economically and educationally and in status. Yeah, you're right, Guadalupe. You don't need a man to support you anymore. So do you need a man at all? You know, and to what degree? And what are you willing to settle for? And now that you make the money, can you settle for a man that you support financially? You see, feminism promised us that men and women were identical and interchangeable. And back in the 70s, if you were around then and came of age as I did, the message was clear. Women were going to make money, and it was going to put men on easy street. It was all going to flip around because men and women are supposedly identical and interchangeable. And so wealthy women were going to marry men, just as wealthy men had always married women. and they were going to support a man and family, just as men had always supported a woman and family, and it was just going to flip around. Well, no, it didn't. That's not what happened. What happened is you get places like Japan where the economic situation is such that the men can't make the necessary family supporting wage, and they become less attractive and desirable. And when the men give up, they stop pursuing success because it's useless. If they feel they can't get a woman, then why do they need a family supporting wage? They just live off of a subsistence wage because they're happy with that.
Okay, so we've got 20 minutes left. So now if you want to comment, please just raise your hand and just comment, okay? So whoever wants to go next, please just raise your hand. Does anybody want to comment?
Andrew just waved his hand, didn't you?
Andrew did.
Okay, cool. Go for it.
I have a very half-formed thought, but I'm not sure. I might ramble and not really make any sense. But I was just thinking about. I'm not even going to remember her name now. Sorry, who's the woman who wrote about shame? Who's very famous for writing about Brené Brown. So Brené Brown has this book, and she was talking about this. Just popped into my head, so I was sort of thinking about like. She wrote about shame, and she used to do a lot of research into female shame, like how women experience shame. And she did a talk, and a man came up to her after the talk and said, do you ever research into male shame? And she said, no. And she was a bit like, the point of her anecdote was that she never really considered male shame as a problem because men are supposed to be the ones who are in power. And so we're all fine, right? And the man said to her, look, my wife and my daughter love you and they love your books. And they keep talking about the need for everybody to open up and be vulnerable. But he said, if I take one step off my white horse, they would be absolutely sickened. Right? I'm paraphrasing, but he said that to her and it had a really big effect on her. And so she went away and started researching into male shame and how men experience shame very differently to how women experience shame. So I'm sort of bringing this up because I feel like there's some kind of I think there's a problem of misunderstanding men and women and misunderstanding ourselves as men and women, because I think a lot of men think they want sex and relationships, but they actually just want sort of love and validation, which is not necessarily the same thing. And a lot of women maybe want strong man or a dynamic man or what have you, but that doesn't necessarily, there may be something else going on there. So I think I'm sort of repeating my point from before, but I think the answer to this is to sort of understand what men and women need from each other and how we can kind of give it to each other.
Okay, Guadalupe, go for it.
Okay. Yes, I think if we look into what is it that men and women, what is separating men and women, because we are the two sides of the one species. The two sides is a way of putting it. And what is this fight that we are supposed to have? Yeah, because I don't know it. I have never known it. It has puzzled me all my entire life. Only now, because I did study feminism, it's clearer. But what it is? Okay, so it is this kind of preconceived ideas that is about domination and submission. Yes, like what Clark said about men want to have sex, women hold the key to sex, and all these things that I heard all my entire life. No, okay, Tim, I am not looking for a man. I think you said I was looking for a man or something. I am not talking personally. I'm generalizing when I speak. Yeah, please don't take it like it's my personal situation. So what is it that separates us? Okay, so this this thing about men seeing women as something hunting for it, the hunter. They want to get the sex, they want to get the woman, and then they leave, and the woman doesn't know if he liked it, if he didn't. It's all these dynamics that you see it in the dating sites. It's like a huge market where it's so confusion. It's like we are selling each other. They are laughing. It's just incredible. Don't go there. Well, I wouldn't advise anybody. So what is it that is separating us? That's perhaps what we have to say. What is separating us? Why we cannot get together if we both need the same thing? Men and women need the same thing. Obviously, there are other types of relationship, same-sex relationship, etc. But here we are talking about heterosexual relationship. So what is it that's separating us? That's what I'm asking myself here.
All right, I'm going to let everyone talk for slightly longer, so I'll just go like this when your time is up, okay? So Tim, please go
So
for
what's separating us? Well, so we've got a world where women are being told through feminism, the feminist message, that man bad, the overempowered oppressor, woman good, the innocent victim. That's kind of the gist of the rhetoric. And women are being told that men are the source of violence, criminality, war, pollution, basically all things bad. And that women, look at the keynote address of Elizabeth Cady Stanton back in Seneca Falls in 1848. Men are the oppressors and women are the oppressed, the victims. And isn't that going to create resentment in women if they look out at the world and think it's a kind of male heaven and female hell and that it's all men's fault? How would that not generate a measure of intersex rage, rancor, resentment, victim, vengeance? This is the poison. I believe it comes out of this belief system, this men have the power, women are the victims belief system, which was never more than half of gender reality. I'll stop there.
Clark, do you want to go for it?
Here. Feedback on what Tim said. We can't get together because our mating strategies and our reproductive strategies are at opposition. Men's reproductive strategies are to cast their seed widely. Women's reproductive strategies are to be selective and to cull out less appropriate or attractive mates. And Guadalupe herself said that older men who have established themselves are more attractive to younger women. This is, now I don't think that we are speaking again at cross purposes. I think we're saying the same thing. I just think that the notion of romantic love needs to be reconsidered in Western society. In the past, you had arranged marriages. Hey, it worked. Now, I'm not going to say that it was best. I will say that up until technological advancements allowed women to leave the home and enter the workforce, not feminism, but technological advancements, the washing machine, the dishwasher, reproductive choice, those things allowed women to leave the home and enter the workforce, where they began to encounter more attractive males than the guys who were at home. That's all I got to say.
Well, I would just add to that, that technology didn't just change the world of women, it also changed the world of men radically. You got the introduction of unions, paid vacations, you got a workaday world that was vastly cleaner, safer, less arduous. Machine power took the place of Yeah, so the workaday world of men became enormously more conducive and appealing to women than it had ever been before.
Yes, Andrew, please go ahead. You haven't spoken in a while. Go for it.
I think I'll just lightly disagree with Tim on the feminism is the one that's feminism is causing the resentment among men. I think, among women. I think women's experiences of men are also contributing to that resentment, because, and I think coming back to this idea of like, 20, 30, 40 years ago, men generally were the ones who had the work, the money, and the women had to sort of marry into, or to get like a nice life, they had to get a husband with a good bank account, and now that's not true anymore. So what women's options are more open, right? And I imagine that women probably had the same desires in the 50s than they do now. It's just that now they don't have to put up with their husband, because divorce is not so much of a social taboo, and it's not so financially necessary for them to stay with a man to have access to money, basically, so they can live their own lives. So of course they're what they want from men is going to change, and they're sort of what's the word? They're going to have a higher sort of expectation of men, and I don't think that expectation is unreasonable. To be honest, I think like men should be nice and kind and respectful and everything to women, and if they're not, then they shouldn't be. Then they're not going to be their boyfriend. And it's kind of in a way, it's as simple as that. It's a social change, and it's difficult for everybody to get used to that. So we're going through a bit of a transition period, but ultimately, hopefully we do get to a state where men and women really are sort of interchangeable and equal, and we can just hope that we want the best from each other, rather than wanting money or sex or a provider or whatever it is, like all those sort of things that seem very materialist.
Okay, before Guadalupe comes in, I just want to say one thing, as I often comment. Women have always worked. Can we not keep saying this idea that women were never working? I think what we mean is that when second wave feminism came about, women were pushed into the workforce, for better or for worse, depending on your point of view, in a much more larger capacity. But historically, a lot of people worked on farms, and it was common for women to work in textiles. It was common for women to work as governesses in certain periods of time. So women never just sat at home. The idea of women just sitting at home doing nothing doesn't really exist. Women have always worked and done physical labor. It's just been different types of labor, and it's not been the same as the kind of modern workplace. I just want to push that out for the viewers. Guadalupe, please go for it.
Yes, it's true. But it was the working class woman has always worked. The farms, I come from a farming background, and we always worked in the farms, and in the factories, and in the sea, and in the ports with the fish, and in the markets. The woman that didn't work was the woman that was married to a middle class professional man, etc. But, Sarina, the money used to go to the husband because she couldn't keep the money for herself. If she was married, so the money, she would get half or a quarter of what men would get doing the same job, and the money would go to the husband because she didn't have civil rights, she didn't have the right to property, and she didn't have the right to her children. Do you understand? So yes, it's true, but also even there, when women were working, she didn't have the right to her money. My mother, for example, in Spain, yes, her money was my father's money. She didn't have her own money. Women didn't have their own money. And in this country, in the UK, I know that you are not in the UK, but in the United States was the same, actually. The women didn't have the right to their own money. The husband was the one running the show. Obviously, if the husband was a nice man, okay. Now, what I wanted to say, feminism for Tim. I heard you, because I've been watching some of Sarina's meetings with you, when you talk about feminism. Look, feminism, you need to know what it is. Just because you mention some people, it doesn't mean that you know, because I can tell you there is much more to it. For example, when you mention Kate Millett, or you mention Andrea Dworkin, or you mention Catherine McKinnon, who were amazing, and they are in a context of what they got for us, sexual harassment, violence against sexual violence and all that. And for example, Kate Millett is magnificent, but you have to understand what she was talking about. And
sorry, just to interrupt, can we try and keep it on the overall topic?
Yes, but because, well, if we talk about something that, and we bring these names and these ideas, but you need to develop them further. I wouldn't mind if we talk about one of them, if you wanted to have one, and we talk about one of them and we develop them. But anyway, that's what happens when we blame everything on feminism, because we don't know really what it is. Feminism makes women much more interesting. Men can have wives that they can talk to. If the men are working somewhere, they come home. If the wife finished, if the wife is a woman that is locked up in the house, that she's just cleaning and whatever is doing, she has nothing of interest. But now feminism is bringing men and women together, because in the countries where there is no feminism, men and women have lives that are parallel, and they only meet in bed to procreate for whatever minutes it takes them, and then the next day they are out in parallel lives. They don't see each other. They have nothing.
All right, sorry, I'm going to have to stop you there. Okay, thank you. Right, who would like to? We've got 4 minutes left, so who would like to comment, please? Tim, you go for it.
Okay. Have you ever read Kate Millett's sister Mallory? Her younger sister. She was around when that book, Sexual Politics, was being written. And she'll tell you all about how her sister and her friends were cackling and drunk with power when they were writing that whole thing. Feminism. Well, all I can say is there's more in heaven and earth than is dreamt of in the feminist philosophy. And do I know feminism? Well, I've read all the classics, from The Feminine Mystique to The Second Sex and Backlash and The Beauty Myth and so on. And I see an enormous victim dictum throughout the whole thing, all with the premise that men have the power and women are the victims. Well, there's another half of gender reality. If you look at gender realities, it's played out along the love axis. If you look at gender realities as played out along the respect axis, then feminism is pretty valid. But the other half of gender reality was played out along the love axis. And this is where men were the second sex. This is where men did not get empathy. This is men sent off to war, and this is men dying in huge numbers in hard hazardous labor and imprisonment and chain gangs and on and on and on. So there's this other half of gender reality of which I think feminism is clueless. And this makes feminism a kind of a lie of omission, like a half-truth. And a half-truth is a whole lie. If you don't look at both sides.
I like that.
So,
all right, cool. Let's end please, with Andrew and then Clark, and then we will end this discussion. Okay, Andrew, go for it.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think incels possibly challenge our narratives around feminism and anti-feminism as well, because I think what incels show is that not all.
he wants a fist bump.
Here you go. Not all men are either powerful or feel powerful, right? Like if that was a narrative, I don't think that is the feminist narrative, but if that was a narrative, incels dispel that narrative, dispel that myth. Not all men feel powerful. They don't feel they have status, right? And that's very clear. But just because men feel like they don't have status doesn't mean they should have status or they should have access to the things that they think give them status. So I think it challenges both narratives. Like, yes, we should definitely, I think we should have empathy for incels. I think we should, and I think that we should broaden that, and we should say, we should have empathy for men and the male experience. We should understand that not all men, probably most men, don't feel very powerful. And I think that's something that I think, whatever feminism or whatever you want to call it, I think that needs to be something that is much more thought about. But that doesn't mean that men have a right to be anywhere or with anyone, right? It just means that we're human, we're fallible, we have complex desires, and we need to kind of like work with each other to make ourselves feel better, right? Like, I don't know what the answer is, but like, I'm just, that's my sort of ending point. I think incels are an interesting challenge to both narratives. That's it.
Cool. So Clark, I'll let you have the last closing thoughts, and then we will end this stream. Thank you. Go for it. You're muted. Sorry, I unmuted you.
How's that?
Yep, good. Go for it. Go on.
Tim, you had me when you paraphrased Shakespeare. Andrew, men feel powerful. Men should feel powerful. I think we all want all men to feel powerful. And I agree with you 100%. The term incel, though, again, is disparaging to me, has required us to reconsider our approach and our lack of empathy toward men. Let's see. The term was stolen from a woman who was bisexual and then became a lesbian. And us working together to deal with these issues, well, I'll quote Frederick Douglass, who said that power concedes nothing without a struggle. So it's going to be a struggle in order for us to come to a place where we can work together to deal with these issues. Boom. Mic drop.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. I've really enjoyed today's chat. This has been very constructive, and I actually think that everybody offers something of value to this discussion. So thank you everyone for tuning in today, and I will be live again next Tuesday on the 14th with a new guest, so that should be very interesting. So everybody, please, thank you so much for tuning in. This is The Rational Female, and goodbye.